First story. Lost my daughter after her self-harm. No one has any idea why she did it. The only clue is her diary, but my wife demands not to read it, saying it's disrespectful and an invasion of our daughter. Now, my son read it and started lashing out and resenting his sister. I'm at a loss. Need help, please. My 44M daughter 17F committed self-harm 2 months ago. It was honestly a big shock, as she's never shown any signs that she wanted to take her life. My wife and I blame ourselves and wish that we could have done more. She was in therapy for something unrelated. She was very afraid and would panic at the sight of blood. So we thought that her feelings in general would be addressed during her sessions. We were always very supportive of her, asking her about her days, or if she's having any troubles about anything when she's noticeably looking down. We only started cleaning out her room a week ago. I was going through her closet, and tucked at the very back was a small backpack with her diary in it. I really wanted to read it because my daughter didn't leave anything behind, not a note saying why she did it or anything. So I was hoping that maybe something in her diary would shine light as to why she did what she did. I brought the idea up to my wife, and she said absolutely not. Though she's not with us anymore, she still deserves the utmost respect. My son 14M also wants to know why her sister left, but doesn't think that reading her diary is the way to go about it. I don't know. I feel like we need closure. My family and her friends need closure. My wife cries herself to sleep every night, repeating that she wishes we could have done something different, and I comfort her. My son obviously misses his sister, as they were so close. He misses her so much that sometimes we'd find him asleep by the door of his sister's room in the middle of the night. My daughter didn't have any social media presence, but had a good amount of friends, and none of them know why she did it either. This diary is our last shot at giving everyone she knew the answer to why. I know diaries are very intimate, and the last thing I want to do is disrespect my daughter. If I don't end up reading her diary, how will I find closure? How will my family move past this? Every day is filled with tears and many thoughts of why. Was it my wife and I's fault? We don't know, which is why I want to know. If it was us, I don't want to have us make the same mistakes with our only child left. I don't know exactly what I'm asking for, but anything would be appreciated. Edit. After another restless night, I was very surprised to wake up to this. Thank you so much for your condolences and for sharing your thoughts and experiences. I wish I could respond to all of you, but I am mentally exhausted. Again, thank you all so much. Comments. XBTXMXST. When my best friend killed himself, I found his diary and read it. I did not receive any closure. I didn't learn anything about his mental health that I didn't already know. The key to fixing the cloud that hung over my head, my heart, and my bones wasn't in his diary. I did read about how he thought some of the clouds he saw last Thursday looked like cats, with a smiley face at the end of the sentence. I read about how he had a weird dream where he could fly. I read about his plans to get me a birthday present. For a moment, he was still alive in those pages. I could hear him. I could picture him writing this down. I was inside of his mind for a moment, and it was worth it. I don't know if I recovered faster or healed quicker. I certainly didn't get closure, but I don't regret it for a single second. It was worth it. I would read it if I were you. Sneakavon Sneakavins. Hey OP, my dad passed away when I was 11. And when I turned 25, my aunt gave me some journals he wrote and gave me the option to read them or not or whatever. I agonized over it for a long time, but eventually I did read them. The situation isn't exactly the same, but I can tell you this, it was incredibly difficult and incredibly painful. Most people tend to journal more about negative things than the positive, and some of the things there made me struggle a lot. I don't think I regret the choice to read them, but I would highly recommend waiting a while before trying to know what's in there. It's entirely possible that it will not give you closure, and you can never unknow the things you read, so you need to be sure you're ready for it. I like the idea of asking her therapist to read them, or even a different therapist who didn't even know her. It seems like much less of an invasion of privacy to have someone else read her personal thoughts and feelings. I think the most important thing is that you and your wife come to an understanding about this, because it is not worth it to read them if it will seriously hurt your wife. Update. First and foremost, thank you all so much for your condolences and for sharing your thoughts and experiences dealing with losing a loved one. Secondly, I'm sorry if this post isn't necessarily the neatest. I am still at a loss for words. Basically, I'm a pathetic excuse of a father for not realizing that my son goes on Reddit. I don't keep track of the social media apps he uses. So he saw my original post where many of y'all were urging me to read my daughter's diary. My son did so behind our backs, and we only came to find out when he lashed out. calling his sister selfish, and all the names under the sun for doing what she did. My wife, on the other hand, is beyond pissed at my son for reading our daughter's diary. She said that our daughter is going to be mad at our family when she gets back, only to find out that one of us read it. I'm guessing she hasn't accepted the fact that she's gone and will never return. As for me and my wife, we haven't read our daughter's diary. Only our son did. Based on my son's reaction, I can assume that you guys were right that her diary is filled with hatred, as if someone else wrote in it. I don't know the contents of it, but I know how and who my daughter was, and her brother loved her for who she was, and now he can't stand it when his sister's name is mentioned. That was exactly what I was afraid of, that after reading her diary, our perspective of her would be completely different. My son is temporarily speaking with a family member who's a therapist, and we'll be switching him over to a different one, hopefully by next week, to avoid conflict of interests. And as a family, we're now in contact with a counselor. I want to talk to my wife about her getting into therapy too, as she still thinks our daughter is still here, but she's just away on a trip, as my wife calls it. But beyond that, still nothing much has changed. My wife still cries every night, and though my son is very upset with his sister, we still find him around his sister's room. And for me, nothing, still empty, and probably always will be, which isn't fair to my son and wife. So I'll probably seek a therapist for myself as well. Plus, I know many marriages don't survive after the death of a child. So marriage counseling is something I want to bring up to my wife when I feel it is appropriate. What about the diary? It's gone, hidden well within our home. Hell, I may even forget where it's at years down the line. But I do know I want to read it when I'm ready, whether that's with my wife or not. I want to know her struggles, read her fun times if she has any written, and what made her do it. I know reading it won't give me closure, but it will give me an insight into what she was going through, and let that be a lesson for me to be better for my son, and to just always be there whether he's feeling fine or not. That's about it. My heart still physically hurts from the loss of my daughter, and for the rest of my family, as they're also in so much pain. Some of you guys might be expecting this update to be about the contents of the diary, but I'm choosing not to read it for a long time. And if my wife wants to, I won't stop her. But I do want to tell her that she may not recognize our own daughter as my son didn't. Only time will heal our wounds, and lots of therapy and support. Thank you all so much for your thoughts and prayers. I can say for myself that it brought me a bit of comfort after such a massive loss. Again, thank you all so much. Edit. Many apologies for the typos. My mind has been in shambles. Comments. Mill Hadfield. I'm glad you're getting your son therapy. It sounds like he needs it after what he read, whatever it is. I strongly advise both you and your wife to have therapy, as it's clear you're both struggling also. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I wish you the best. Stillinger 767. I keep a journal, and I can tell you that if someone read it, they would probably have a very incomplete picture of me. I typically only write out my most negative emotions because, for me, it's a way to purge those thoughts and feelings. They are certainly not all that I am, so if you ever do read it, try to remember you're probably reading the very darkest thoughts she had and not the whole picture. Second story. Abusive ex-girlfriend somehow found me and catfished me in Tinder after 5 years of NC, then stalked and harassed me. She broke into my house, trashed everything, and attacked a cop. That's how I got my satisfactory ending of her getting locked up in jail for a very long time. Trigger warning: miscarriage, verbal, and physical abuse. I'm a little rattled by this whole situation, as all this happened today, so I apologize if it's a little over the place. My abusive ex catfished me on Tinder, and is now stalking me. Background to the story. I'm male, 45 now, met Sarah, female, 47 now, back in 2018. Because of many past traumas, I was not looking for any type of relationship, just a casual fling. She was okay with that, mentioning that she wasn't looking for anything serious either. We were both childless. In early November, the condom broke. We both got tested, and we were clean. To our shock, she was pregnant. We decided to keep it and become a couple. We started making plans to sell our condos and buy a bigger one together. In late January, the Friday before the first trimester, we went to the restaurant and had a nice meal. It was snowing, sleeping a little outside when we came out. She slipped on a patch of ice under a small snow pile and fell on her behind. I helped her up and asked her if she was okay. She laughed it off and said it hurt her ego more than anything. I said that with her being a geriatric pregnancy, we should go to the hospital to see if everything was all right. She didn't appreciate the geriatric I threw in there and became obstinate to not go to the hospital. I insisted a few times, But she said no and started getting a little pissy with me for insisting. So I dropped it. We went to her place and talked for a while before going to sleep. We were sleeping. I was the big spoon. At around 3 a.m., I woke up and thought she was sleeping. But then I felt her sobbing. I hugged her, and when I moved a little, I felt wetness in the chest area. It all clicked into place for me right away, and I was wide awake now. I hugged her tighter and said it was going to be all right. She started full-on ugly crying, turned towards me, and buried her head on my shoulder. I held on to her for a few minutes. As a side note, it was the 4th pregnancy I was responsible for that ended in a miscarriage, though it was the first time I was actually there when it happened. The other 3 had started while the exes were working. In my head, the best thing for me to do is to keep my head level to help her through it. I figured she was allowed to freak out, and I should take care of SHT. So after a few minutes, I told her that we should go to the hospital to get her checked out. She didn't say anything. She was basically catatonic, in shock. I helped her up and took her to the bathroom. Our clothes, the bed sheets, and ourselves were pretty much covered in blood. I took her to the shower, cleaned her, dried her, and put on fresh clothes, including a pad. I dressed myself in the spare clothes I kept at her place, and we took a cab to the hospital, even if it was only a 5-minute walk. The hospital couldn't do much, but acknowledge what we knew that she had miscarried. They would need to perform a D&C as she was 12 weeks pregnant, and they wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be any complications, and she needed a blood transfusion as she was anemic from the blood loss. They did that. After the transfusion, she asked if they could give her something to help her sleep. They told her not yet, as they had to make sure she had no adverse reaction to the transfusion for the next hour. An hour later, they gave her an opioid to help her rest and sleep. They told me she should be out for a few hours, and I was welcome to stay in the room with her. I decided to go back to her condo to clean up the mess we left while she slept. I hand-washed the clothes and the bed sheets as much as I could and threw them in the washer. I cleaned the blood off of the floor, the shower, the toilet, and the mattress. When the washer was done, I threw the stuff in the dryer. I placed new sheets on the bed, new towels in the bathroom, and went back to the hospital. She was still sound asleep when I got back. I sat down in the chair next to her gurney. When she woke up, we talked, and she felt somewhat better physically. She asked me if I had stayed in the room with her the whole time. I told her no and what I had done. Apparently that was the wrong thing to do, and she started berating me for leaving. I told her that I thought I was doing a good thing to make your return home more comfortable and less traumatic by not having those reminders there when she would get there. She said she didn't feel supported. This is the moment the cycle of verbal abuse began. She started berating me for leaving, for not catching her when she slipped, for making us go to the restaurant during her pregnancy, for choosing that poor excuse of a restaurant that didn't salt their entrance to make sure the guests didn't slip. Since she had gone through the physical and psychological trauma of the miscarriage, and I was only dealing with the sadness of it, I felt it was just a way for her to deal with her grief. So I decided to take it and not react too much. She accused me of being cold when it happened, instead of being an emotional wreck like she was, because I was still able to function while she shut down. I told her that if I hadn't helped her, she could have bled out or been in worse shape by the time she got to the hospital. She told me I don't need a hero to save me, that she's not a weak, defenseless woman. Basically, anything I said was the wrong thing to say. I thought it was just a phase that would blow over, and I let it slide and took it. I thought I was strong enough mentally to take it. But it got to me, and I started falling into a depression. She would hurl all sorts of verbal abuse my way, and I would react less and less as I cared less and less. I think she was trying to get a reaction out of me to be able to play the victim if I reacted violently towards her. I thought about leaving, but in all honesty, I didn't want to be the that breaks up with her soon after her miscarriage. When I stopped reacting altogether, that's when she started with the slaps and other forms of physical abuse. But I was so deep in my depression at that point that I didn't defend myself. I know I'm a weak RSP for that, but what are you going to do? One thing I should note now is that I am a type 1 diabetic and take insulin every day to regulate my blood sugar and other medications to help with other issues. As I was falling deeper and deeper into my depression, I stopped caring about my medication and my health. After 3 months of abuse and depression, my physical health was as bad, if not worse, than my mental health. At the beginning of May, I went to the ER as I was feeling very ill: kidney pains, blurred vision, swollen legs, and a bad infection on my back, to name a few issues. When I checked in the ER, I turned my phone off and didn't tell anyone where I was. The doctors started treating me, And I also got to talk to a shrink when they asked me why I stopped taking my medication and said I just didn't feel like it. That was probably my godsend and helped me see the cycle of abuse and depression I had fallen into. After 48 hours in the ER, they finally found a bed for me, and I was admitted. After another 3 days, I finally felt mentally better enough to open my phone. I had so many missed calls and messages from Sarah. I called my parents to tell them what happened, and my mother answered the phone. She was worried about me because Sarah had told her I hadn't responded to her messages. I told her that I was incredibly sick and in the hospital right now. I told her which hospital room number I was in and asked her not to give any information to Sarah, and that if she told our family to make sure that they don't give out any info to Sarah, that I would explain when if she came to meet me. I sent Sarah a voice note. I am in the hospital because of your crazy arse, and I don't ever want to see you again. When I get out of the hospital, I will pack your things at my condo and send them to you. Whatever clothes or other items of mine I may have at your place, you can throw away or burn if you want. I do not want or need them. She sent a few replies, but I never listened to them or replied. I didn't want to block her because I wanted the messages in case she decided to get nasty, and I could go to the police to get a restraining order or something. I asked the nurses if there was a way to flag my file so as not to give out any info on my room number or my status to anyone by phone or in person, as I was trying to get away from an abusive ex. They told me that it was possible, and they added the flag to my file. She never came to visit me in the hospital, so I took it as a good sign. I got out of the hospital 6 weeks later. Thanks to a great group insurance package at work, I was on sick leave for 7 months at almost my full salary, and was finally able to go back to work in December 2019. I packed her SHT and sent it to her, but I never heard back from her until now. The situation. Sorry for all that background info. I realize it's a lot, but I had to explain the situation for you to understand what happened and how I feel. After everything that happened, it just solidified my desire to remain single, preferring to focus on a simple life. I called it living just north of neutral. Small pleasures, a good meal, a good show, movie, a good game, and if I felt sad, I would only be a little sad. I had a couple of FWB that helped satisfy my need for physical contact. In February 2024, both of my FWB had met a new guy, each had a new guy. They did not meet the same guy, and they wanted to make it work with them. I wished them the best of luck, and we stopped our association. I joined Tinder at that time and went on a few dates. A week ago, I matched with a woman called Maria, 46. We started chatting, and the vibe seemed really good. We had some interests in common and decided to meet for a coffee to see where it would lead. The date was set for today at around noon. At 12:10, she sent a message saying that she couldn't make it, and we should try it another time. As I left the cafe, I saw Sarah across the street looking straight at me. It didn't feel like a coincidence, and I'm convinced the bee had catfished me. I took off like a bat out of hell. I'm not in the greatest physical shape, but I was running for my life. I looked back, and she was running after me. Thankfully, I know my city very well. I entered a shop that I knew fed to an underground network of tunnels that went off in multiple directions. I managed to lose her in there. Since I never moved from my old condo, I knew she knew where I lived. I figured I would try to beat her there. I rushed home, and she was not there. Less than 5 minutes later, my phone rings, and it's the door intercom letting me know someone wants to come in. I answer. "Hello," Sarah says. "I want to talk." I nope out of the call without unlocking the door. She calls back again and again and again. I don't answer. Normally I would block the number, but I can't with this phone number as I need it for when I have visitors or deliveries. After maybe 12 calls, I finally answer again and tell her, "If you don't stop, I'll call the cops," and hang up. She stopped calling. Thankfully, the security system in our building, while not 100% foolproof, has enough safeguards in place to prevent people just walking in and knocking on doors. Maria sent me a message on Tinder saying, "Please, I just want to talk," confirming my suspicion that my match was her. I unmatched and deleted Tinder. A few hours later, I had errands to run. I pick up my bags and leave my apartment. I go down to the lobby of the building, and I see her sitting on the bench across the street from my building. And now I feel trapped in my building, and I don't know what to do. I sent an email to the company that manages my condo building to ask if I have need of it. Would they make the security camera footage available to me for my own protection? I'm waiting to hear on that. I also sent a text message to a couple of friends of mine that I might need them as backup if when I decide to finally confront her. They're on standby. I went back to the lobby later, and I didn't see her across the street anymore. I'm wondering if I should involve the police or not. Thankfully, I work from home 3 days a week, and I don't need to go to the office until Tuesday. I will talk to my boss to see if I could change it as the situation evolves. Thanks for reading this far. It felt good to type it all out. I will update you when I can. Update. It's been a week since my post, and a lot has happened. I'm only posting today because I've been celebrating for the past 48 hours. If you haven't read the original post, the TLDR is that my abusive ex-girlfriend catfished me on Tinder 2 weeks ago. Her fake profile, and I set a date at a coffee house on Sunday afternoon. The fake date sent me a message saying she couldn't make it. I walked out, and there my ex was. My fight or flight reflex kicked in, and I ran like a bat out of hell and made it to my home before her. She then stalked in front of my building for hours. She finally left in the early evening. On Monday, I worked from home to make sure I didn't have to go out and risk running into her. At around 2 p.m., there was a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole, and there she was. I don't know how, but she managed to bypass the building's security system and come to my floor without me ringing her up. I didn't answer the door. She kept knocking. At one point, she started fiddling with the door handle. After our relationship, I had changed the locks in case she had made a copy of my keys. I called 911 to report someone attempting to break into my apartment and wanting her to get trespassed from the building. She heard me talking on the phone and banged the door and yelled out, "You effing idiot, why'd you call the police? I just want to talk." I didn't reply. She banged one last time and left. The police got there. I told them what happened, gave them her info, and told them about our condo board if they needed security footage. I asked if there was anything I could do to get a restraining order. They said that since all she did was knock on my door, there wasn't much they could do. I contacted my best friend and packed my clothes and electronics and went to live at her place until this dies down. Before leaving, I made sure that my apartment's security system, including a video camera, was activated. I stayed there for the whole week. My phone rang from time to time with her trying to get me to open the door for her, but I never answered. This takes us to Thursday. I went to work in the office as my friend also works from home and didn't have space for both of us to work comfortably. I didn't want to impose any more than I should, so I went to the office. Around 1 p.m., I get a call from my alarm company, saying that the alarm went off in my apartment and wanting to know if it was me. I said no, it's not me, and could they send the cops? I looked at the security footage, and there she was, with a baseball bat destroying my furniture, absolutely undeterred by the alarm blaring. I told my boss and showed him the footage. He told me to go handle my business and not worry about anything work-related for now. I love my boss so much. I walked back home. I worked 10 minutes from my apartment. While watching the phone, I saw the police get there, and I saw her take a swing at the cops with the bat. They took her away. I got there as they were putting her in the squad car. I just smiled and waved at her. She tried to break free from the cops and rush me, but they were holding her tightly, and she didn't go anywhere. They told her to stop, or they'd add another count of resisting arrest to her growing list of charges. I went in the building, and the cops wouldn't let me go up as there was a crime scene. I told them I'm the owner of the unit in question, and they sent me up to talk to the cops that were on scene. After showing my ID and proof of residence to the cop outside my door, he waved me in. I walked into a massacre. I was glad I had taken my important electronics, because everything was smashed and shattered. My glass table, my monitors, my TV, every fixture in the kitchen and bathroom. They had turned the water off to prevent further damage. Later on, I talked to a detective and gave them the security footage from the camera. She said it strengthened the case, but given that 4 cops had seen her destroying stuff and had had a bat swung at them, there wasn't much hope for her. My ex is going away for a long time, it looks like, and I couldn't be happier. I'm also talking to a lawyer, as I want to sue her for all damages and punitive damages for everything she put me through. Hopefully this concludes this episode. I have a lot of things to repair and new stuff to buy. I also have to find the perfect gift for my best friend to thank her for helping me out with everything and being such a rock star. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.